everyone, after doing charts, let's talk about the date functions now. So what is date function? First we are covering two functions here, date and date value. So what arguments we can provide to the date function? As we remember, the basic structure of Microsoft Excel function is same. We do the functions in three parts, that is equals to name of the function, and then in the parenthesis we pass the arguments to that particular function, as we did in the case of the sum, or we did in the case of the count, or we did in the case of average. Similarly, we have some date functions, so they only take the data as some kind of a dates. So we are doing all the calculations on the dates. So first function we are covering here is date function. So date function is taking three arguments, that is year, month and date. So it returns the number that represents the date. So what we can do, let's run it parallelly. So I have a sheet here, some date functions is some dates I already taken. So this is 20 March 2001, 31st August 2021. Similarly, other dates are written here. So we covered about the date function. So what we have in the date function, it returns the number that represents the date. So let's try that. Now, how many arguments we can provide it? The year, month and date. Year, month and date. So I'll go back and I'll click on equals to write date. When the parenthesis starts, so even in fact in the output also this tooltip is showing me and telling me about the arguments I can pass. This is year, month and date, and in fact you can see the description for that particular function as well, returns the number that represents the date in Microsoft Excel, date, time, code. And either you can write the function name directly from here, or you can go to formulas, and from the date and time you can choose this date function, returns the number that represents this date in Microsoft Excel, date, time, code. So you can use this insert function as well. You can pick up the date and accordingly you can make the changes. Let's try date. Now let's provide the year. Let me provide the year as 2022. Let me provide the month. Month is maybe 12th. Day, let me provide 31st. And then once this year, month and day is done, I'll close the parenthesis. I'll click on the enter. Now I have the date like 31st December 2022. What we provided, if I'll see in the formula, show formulas. Let's go to the formulas and show formulas. So what we provided date 2022, 12 and 31, and once we have the results are showing it like 31st December 2022. So Microsoft Excel is returning us with the date, and date is shown in the this available option only. So this date and time, what date is doing, it is returning the numbers that represent the date in Microsoft Excel, date and time code. Similarly, let me provide another data set now. I'll copy this and write it here. So this time let me provide 2021, 01 and maybe 5. So what it is returning, it is giving me date like this, 5th January 2021. So I just passed on, rather than writing it like 05012021, what I can do, I can write it in that manner also. So this will save your order. So once you're entering the dates, it will keep it in a same kind of format. You don't need to change the format every time you're making the changes. So this you can change the format. So if you're using this function and I'll change the format, I'll right click on format cell, and I'll go to the date option. In that date, I can change the format to maybe this Wednesday one. I'll click on OK and I'll enlarge this here. So you can have the output like Saturday 31st December 2022. Similarly, I can copy this format. I'll go to home format painter and click on that. I'll have the output like this. But if you see the function is same like that. You have not made any changes. So this date function, what this date function is doing, it is actually providing you with the date that is stored in the form of the Microsoft Excel. That format can be anything. You can decide it later, but date will remain same because you provided the value in the format of year, month and day. Similarly, you can do it for the other dates also. If you want to enter the date manually, you can do that as well. So this is your choice. Either you want to use the date function or you want to enter the data like that. Let's come to another function now. Another date function we are covering in this week is date value. So what you are passing it is you are passing only single argument to this date function, that is date value, and that is date text. So what it does, this function is doing, it converts a date that is stored as text to a serial number that Excel recognizes as a date. So what happens? For example, you enter a date and by default or due to some changes, you made it like a text. You made it like a text. In that case, what you will do, you will convert that text into a serial number that is equal to date, and after converting to that serial number you can pass it to a date again. So how we can do it, let's try that. So for example, I have the 2nd January 2021 with me. What I'll do, I'll write the function first, date value. So what I am passing it, I am passing it this value, this 30. E13, only one value is required. Now, if you're converting it, what you are getting 44198. So this 44198 is the equivalency number of that particular date. So it is a serial number. It is a uniquely identified number for this particular date. So in fact, you see the description for this particular function, that is date value. Date value. So this is converts a date in the form of text to a number that represents the date in Microsoft Excel date time code. So this code is represented by this date. Let me try it for another date also. Let me copy this to other cells as well. So now I have a different number. So for 14th August 1990, serial number is 33099. For 11th September 1993, the serial number is 34223. For 11th January 2021, the serial number is 44207. And for 2nd May 2022, this is 44683. For 2021, it is 44198. Let me change the years here and then see if this serial number is changing up or not. Let me try with the 92. Yes, it is changing. Let me try it with 2020. It is changed again. I'll change this for 2200. This is increased so much now. So the serial number is given by the conversion. So whenever you're working in a date time manner and you can see like some dates are mentioned 3 March or something like this. So this kind of value you're getting, in that case it is advisable to convert that value in date value so that you can have a unique number with that, and you can exactly recognize that, and you can have the dates in the same format so that whenever you are doing the data analysis, that data analysis in the correct format, there should be no changes in that case. So this is date value function. How you want to choose it, you want to write it directly from this equals to and date value, you can choose it from there. You want to have it from the insert function date and time, and you can insert from that also. So it is your choice how you want to use that function, and you can try it with the different values as well. And in fact, you can see it in the increasing order. Let me write a date here, 1st January 2021, and then I'll autofill with the autofill option. Let me have it for till 31st January 2021. So, and now what I am doing, after this, I am using this date value function, date value, and I am passing this value to this function date value I6. Let me make the changes again. This is now in the format of date. Let me change it to the text. Date text. Let me change it to the text. I'll go with the format and I'll make it a text. I'll make it a general. So this is now the serial number over that value. In fact, now I'll click on that function, it will again pass me this value. So the date should be in all the string format, only then it will recognize it. So I'll give this date value function once again. So it will return me no value because it is already converted here. And now if I'll go back and I'll write it as a date only format, I'll pick it as a date only. Date has been picked up. Now this is as in the correct format. Let me add another date now, 0101. and I'm writing it 21. It's again a date in a proper format. But when we were talking about dates here, it was not in the proper format, and that's why it entirely changed it to a serial number and we got the result. And if you see the serial number or a sequence number of a particular dates, let me convert it to the text. I'll click on that. Now you can see the sequence is in the sequential manner. 44197, 198, 199, 200. In the same manner, we got the sequence number conversion for each particular date. And similarly, for this data set, my Excel was considering all these dates in the text, not in the particular format for the date. That is why we converted it into a sequence number given by the Microsoft Excel, and that is recognizable as well. Let's come to another function. So this January 1900 will return serial number 1 by default. That is why how it is increasing. So if I talk about January 2nd, 1900, that number will be 2. January 3rd, 1900 will be 3. Next function is network days. So this function is used very frequently when we are working with a good number of data and when we are working with the date kind of attributes. In that case, this network days is very useful. For this function, what we are passing basically three arguments, or what we can do, we can pass the two argument as well. So start date, end date, and the holidays. So what it happens, returns the number of working days between the start date and the end date. So let's try that. What we are trying here, let me see this network days between two dates. So I have two dates written here, 20th March and 31st August. So I'll go and I'll write the function network days. So network days, I'm writing here, and then I am passing now two arguments. I'll not go with the three arguments. I'll pass the two arguments, that is start date and the end date. So starting date, let me pass this value. This is my E6, and then I'll do the comma, and the end date I'll provide 31st August 2021. I'll end the parenthesis and click on enter. So this is 117 is the answer. So number of days between 20th March 21 and 31st August 21 is given here by this network days. So it is returning us that number of days that is in between these two dates. If you want to give any holidays, let me say in that particular tenure we were having 10 holidays. So it is now discarding that and not considering that. So number of holidays is optional, so you can give the start date and end date. You can try any other parameter as well. Let me try it with the opposite date. Let me do it E7 and E6. Let's see the output in that case. This is in the negative now, because I changed I swapped the column values here. So now this is, let me try it with the any other value. Let me give it E6 and then E8. Now I have only how many days? 11 days are left from 5th March to 20th March. So this is network days. So network days, what is doing? Returning the number of working days between a starting date and ending date. Let's see it in the function as well, date and time. Let's see where we have this network days is there, returns the number of whole work days between two particular dates. So it is only consider the work days here, nothing else. So this is written here. You can give it function like this also. For example, starting date, I am having date 31st December 2021. End date, I am having 01st 02 2022. And number of holidays, it's an optional set of one or more serial date numbers to exclude from the working calendar, such as state and federal holidays and floating holidays. So I need to provide a serial number of that particular date. Let me try this 44197. If it works, it's so we actually added something here. Let me change this. See, this error is coming with the, and this serial number is again not working. Let me try without. Now how many days we are passing? We are passing start date and end date. Now it is not taking this date in this particular format. Let us write this date in particular format. Go back, go to insert, network days, and now write 31st December 2021, and the other date, let's take it 01st February 2022, and now click on OK. So this result you got in something now, 23rd January. So this is again in a wrong format because we need to pick the particular format, that is by clicking on the numbers. Let me select 0 here. Then you can have the 23 days for that, because the format was set the wrong, that was it was giving the wrong result. So this is network days. So normally we calculate the number of days between working days between the start date and the end date. So it is excluding the Saturday and Sundays. Now next function is EOMONTH. You pass two arguments to this function, that is start date and the number of months. So this function is actually returning the serial number of the last day of the month, that is the indicated number of months before or after the start date. So this is returning the serial number of the last day of the month, that is indicated number of months or before the date. So let me try with this date, 20th March, EOMONTH. And what you are passing, now you can pass the start date as 20th March, and the number of months I'll give 2 months. 2 months, I'll click on that. Now it is again giving me a serial number. Let me change to this format. I'll copy the format here for this date. So now I am getting for 20th March, it is Monday 31st May 2021. For next 2 months, it is giving me the last day. So last day of next 2 months is for this May, I have 31st, not 30th. That is why it is returning me this date. Let me try for this 31st August as well. So let's pass this value to this reference. So now it is doing for E7. And for E7, we are getting result 31st October 2021. Let's try for next cell also. This is 31st May 2021. I can change the number of months, maybe 5 months this time. So this is 31st August 2021. So what we are getting with this function, we are getting the serial number of the last day of the month, that is indicated number of months before or after a start date. But we converted it into another format, that is why we are giving the result like this. So what if I'll make the changes like I am not using any format now. Now I'll use EOMONTH and I'll pass the value this 31st August. And how many months? Maybe 2 months. So it will give me the sequence number. It is not giving me the date. If I want to have it into the date, by default it is passing me the serial number or the sequence number that is equivalent to that particular date. So if I want to have a changed value, in that case, I can go back to the reference of the formatting cell and then I can pick up that particular date, or you want to have it in the text format. So it is your choice. But this function EOMONTH, what this EOMONTH function is returning, it is actually returning the serial number of the last day of the month, that is the indicated number of months before or after the start date. Next function is EDATE. So we are passing two arguments to this function, that is EDATE, start date and months. So it returns the serial number that represents the date, that is the indicated number of months before or after a specified date. So it works in the same manner as we are working with the EMONTH. This time it is returning the serial number that actually represent the date, not about the month or something. This is actually returning the date, that is the indicated number of months before or after a specified a date. So let's try that also. So in the same manner, what I'll do, I'll go back to EDATE, and I'll provide this 20th March 2021 E6. And what we need to give, we need to give the months also. I'll give 2 months again. So this is another number. Now you can see the changes here. So this was for E7. This is for E6. Let me do it for E7 as well. And here we passed here 2 again. So this is working in the same. So we are getting the same kind of result here with the EDATE and EOMONTH. But logically, if we see, it is different as because EO month is returning the serial number of the last day of the month, that is the indicated number of months before or after the start date. And this E date is returning, it is returning the serial number of that represents the date, that represents the date that is indicated number of months before or after a specified date. So clearly understand the difference between these two functions. And these five functions which we covered, it is frequently used. What we covered date. Date function is returning, is used to return the number that represents the date. So what you pass it to this function, you pass it year, month and date. Date value function we covered, we pass only one argument to this function, that is date text. So if you have some data already written into some kind of a string or text, in that case you can use the date value. Converts a date that is stored as text to a serial number that Excel recognizes as a date. January 1, 1900 is returned or as a serial number 1 by default. So we can have a function from date and time. You can go in date time and choose a particular function. Network days is another function that returns the number of working days between start date and end date. EO month, start date and months returns the serial number of the last day of the month, that is the indicated number of months before or after the start date. E date, start date and the months returns the serial number that represents the date, that is the indicated number of months before or after a specified date, that is the start date. So let's just have a look on other functions of Excel as well. For the date, let me go back to my Excel, and in this formula we have many date functions, so just have a look on that. So we have covered date, we have covered date value. So we can have this days also. It returns the day of the month, a number from 1 to 13. So if I'll pass it a date, it will only return me a particular day. Let me try this. So what I'm doing, day, and then I'm passing this 20th March 21. So it will return me only date. So I can pick the date from a date saved option. A column is saved, so I can have the dates from this day function. Day function, this number of days function returns the number of days between the two dates. So I can calculate the number of days here. So this days actually take two argument days. I give two arguments, this end date maybe, and then or maybe end date is E7 because it is much higher, 31st August. And then start date, I'll give E6. I'll close the parenthesis and click on enter. So 164 days are in between these two dates. So start and end date is given. So this is about days function. Days function returns the number of days between two particular dates. What you need to provide? You need to provide two arguments, that is end date and start date. Next we have days 360. This function, what we are doing with this function, it returns the number of days between two dates based on a 360-day year. That is, it is considering it a 12 30-day months, not considering it a full-fledged month. So accordingly, it give you number of days. E date, it returns the serial number of the date, that is the indicated number of months before or after the start date. We already talked about the what is the serial number of the date, and what we need to pass, these two arguments we are passing here, that is start date and the number of months. EO month we already covered. EO month is we having with we pass the two arguments again here, start date and the number of months. And then we have the hour. So if we only talked about here date, we can have the time as well. So we can have the date as month, year, day, and we can have the time is in the hour, minute and second. So if we want to have only pick the hour from there, from that particular date, it can be picked by this hour function. ISO week num, so returns the ISO week number in the year for a given date. Minute, again you can pick up the minute from that particular time or particular date. If you need to pick only month, you can pick from that month and it will return you the serial number. Serial number, like 1 is for the January, 12 is for the December. Network days returns the number of whole work days between the two dates. We covered this initial, we have not, but it is same like that. Network days, it returns the number of whole work days between two dates within custom weekend parameters. So you can actually customize this network days, then it is known as this function. Now function, it is very beautiful function. So what I'll do, I'll write it and then you'll understand. So I'm not passing it anything. So when I'm clicking this now function, it is returning me today's date and time. So this is 7 January 2022 and 13:29 is the time. If I'll do this again now, so this time it is taking it error because I entered it wrong. Now and then I'll close the parenthesis. I'm not passing any argument. Now you just see it was entered as 29 and now it is 30. So as the time is changing, this function is changing the value. So this timestamp thing, or you want to have like somebody is opening that Excel sheet, or that every time you're opening that sheet, this now function will be recording the timestamp. Timestamp means your date as well and the time as well, and it is picking up the date and everything from your system date. If your system date is wrong or something, it will be changed accordingly. So this function is used for choosing or recording the times. Now second returns the second a number from 0 to 59. You're passing it to the serial number. You're not passing it a date or timestamp, you're passing it a serial number. Then we have time. It converts hours, minutes, and seconds given as numbers to an Excel serial number formatted with a time format. So this is converting that in a particular format. Like we did for the date, now we are doing for the time. What we are passing for date, we passed up three arguments, that was year, month, and day. And for the time, we are passing up hour, minute, and second. Time value, what we can do, we can convert a text time to a Excel serial number for a time. As we have a serial number for date, we have a serial number for time as well. If it is into the text kind of a thing, then you can convert it into the serial number. As we did for the date value, we are doing it for the time value as well. Today, it will only pick up the today's date. So if I use the today here, so it is only recording the today's date, not the timestamp. Now is recording date as well as time. Today is recording only the today's date. Next, after today, we have another function weekday. So this is returning the weekday only. So what you need to pass? You need to pass the serial number and the return type. It will return as from 1 to 7, identify the day of a week of a day. Week number you can have, week number how you can have, you can again pass the argument, two arguments, that is serial number and the return type. Work day returns the serial number of the date before and after a specified number of work days. Then we have function. When you are customizing this work day, then we have this function. Year is only returning as the year of a date and integer in the range from 1900 to this 4 times 9. Then we have the function year RAC, returns the year fraction representing the number of whole days between start date and end date. So it is advisable for everyone. Please practice these functions, very easy to understand, and everything is written here. And in fact, we discussed about this. But when we talk about the frequently used functions, so we covered and practiced those 5 functions. So your assignment will be based on other function we recently briefly discussed. So we covered these functions. In this week, what we have learned about how we can do the formatting. This formatting is about the cell formatting. We learned how we can provide the borders to our table, our data, whether it can be black color or you can have it with a different color also. You can decide the border style. You can draw the table, you can draw the border as well. Then we learned about the formatting of the data. You can show your result in particular currency as well. You can show your result in some kind of a number percentage format also. Then we learned about inserting and formatting the shapes and images. We learned about the smart art for visual representation of information. We looked for screenshot, we looked for the 3D models, everything you can all insert in the Microsoft Excel. You're working with Excel, it is not necessary or it is not mandatory that you only work with boring data or something. You can have a interactive interface or a visual display of your Excel book also. So it depends on your application whether it is required or not. Then we learned about creating a chart from data and its format. First, we need to look for the data. Once we have the data, we need to decide what kind of chart we need. And we can choose it from the bar chart, we can choose it from the scatter chart, we can choose it from the pie chart. Once our charts are selected, we need to insert the chart and we can look and cross check the data. And accordingly, we can format our chart. We can choose any predefined theme as well. We can give access, we can choose text style, we can do that data formatting accordingly and make our chart more responsive and more beautiful. And we can actually save that image as PNG, JPG, or any other format, and we can share the results with our clients, our community, our teammates using that picture. We learned about various types of the charts, and then we covered up some date functions. We covered 5 functions. Basically, we covered date function, date value function, network days function, EO month, and e-date function. And in fact, briefly, we discussed all the date functions that is available in Microsoft Excel. We talked about functions like date, we talked about functions like month, year, time, timestamp, now, today. These are very good functions. So it depends on your application of the data. It is not necessary that you use all the data. It can be happen like some 4 or 5 date functions you are using regularly and other functions you don't need for a time. So it depends on your application, but it is advisable you should read about all the functions. So whenever if you have the requirement of using that functions, that time you can use those functions. Like if you need to record today's time or today's timestamp, accordingly you are aware that you need to choose between now or today. So if your requirement is to put or save the timestamp as well, in that case you will use the now function. But if your requirement is to only record the date, in that case you will choose today function. So if you're aware about the definition and the description of that particular function, only then you can choose that function. So the functions available with us, what you can do, you can choose those functions according to your requirement and the data, and you can perform data pre-processing. And after processing, these functions will help you to make your data more clear and more uniform. This is all for this week. Thank you. Keep learning, and you'll learn more by doing more assignments. Thank you.